So I'm thrilled to have you here today because I'm going through a little bit of a Jalen crisis.
Okay.
And I always love you, I mean, for a multitude of reasons, but like you're great to talk through. Like sometimes you need to talk through things
Yeah.
and kind of understand. And maybe it's because I still have like scarred from Wentz, and I saw some of the same, and obviously completely different situations, but some of the same things that befalled Wentz, like before his great slide. I mean, he was really good, right? Like,
Mhm.
I mean, we talked about his what he was, and then mechanics became a problem. Last year, we saw some issues with Jalen when it came to mechanics. Talk
Yeah.
it through, Baldy. I mean, where are we at with Jalen here?
Well, it was a dramatic drop off in the second half of the season, and even when they were 10-1, I thought he was leaving the pocket too early. I thought he was leaving some plays on the field. The year before, I thought he was the best deep thrower in the NFL. Now,
Yeah.
a lot of that was A.J. Brown, like he's just an animal with the ball in the air. I don't want to compare him to T.O. yet, but he was like T.O. Like he just wanted it more than anybody else, and he had the physical gifts to go get it. And Devontae too. I mean, the two of them. I mean, the deep ball down the field. Remember those games against Pittsburgh?
Oh yeah.
I mean, like he just aired it out, and it was really impressive. Now the deep shots didn't come like they did last year. That's okay. Uh, you know, um, but I just read where Josh Allen spent some time with like basically a guy that can really work on his mechanics. Like he thought, like last year, he was overcompensating for a bad elbow, a bad shoulder, and he was getting away from the fundamentals. And the last time we worked with this guy, Chris Meza, he went and basically had his best season of his career. I think players, and I remember when Peyton and Eli used to go see David Cutcliffe at Duke when he was coaching Duke, and he was Peyton's offensive coordinator and Eli's head coach at Ole Miss. And they would go down there and spend a week at Duke. No media, nobody knew what he was, and they just worked on the mechanics. Like I think players always have to work on their mechanics, Gus. Because it's like pitching. It's such
Yeah.
a mechanical driven business. And Carson he just never recognized that. I mean, Carson was always bigger. He was a cyborg. He was just bigger and stronger than anybody else at North Dakota State High School. And he could just throw the ball without mechanics. He just had tremendous strength, tremendous arm strength. But you have to really learn how to pitch, And so we know guys that can throw 100 miles an hour, but they can't pitch. And I think you have to learn how to pitch. And it's everything. And so, I think that's where Jalen's at. Like he's got to really I think Kellen Moore is going to help him a great deal. The offense was horrible last year because it was very predictable
Yeah.
by formation, by personnel groupings. So I hope that Nussmeier, the quarterback coach, along with Kellen Moore, they've been together in Dallas. They've been together in with the Chargers. Nussmeier's son is the quarterback at LSU right now. I've been around him a lot. Like he's a mechanically driven guy, and I think Jalen needs that.
Yeah, I think you're right. The only other nagging thing, because obviously we saw the same thing. I mean, 2 years ago he was sensational. The only difference too is he was a big part of the run game, and defenses had to account for that. So there was a lot of man that was being played, and they took their shots and they succeeded with their shots. Last year, when he's not part of the run game, it felt like they were a bit in a paper bag a little bit offensively. The spacing wasn't there.
Well, I mean, I think they didn't have an answer for the blitz, like it was just ridiculous what teams were doing to them.
Right.
They didn't have quick sets and quick, just 3-step drops. They just didn't have some basic things. They didn't have sight adjust. Like they just have basic things to help a quarterback out. Like I always say this. I mean, Kurt Warner kind of taught me this working with him for a couple of years. Like you've got to have answers to what the defense is doing. And, sometimes you just have to be Patrick Mahomes and you just have to create. That's part of the NFL, no question. And you got to have more successes than turnovers in that department. But the offense has to have answers for what the defense is doing, and it can't be just the quarterback scrambles. It can't be that. It actually has to be the antithesis of that. It has to the ball's got to come out. Now, there's teams that are on 3rd and 8, teams are going to throw trap defenses at you and force you to get the ball out of your hands. That stuff will happen, but I didn't think they had built-in answers to what defenses were doing.
No, we talked about just throwing hot. Like there was none of that stuff. And I listen, I think you're right. And I think, again, with a new voice, a new attack offensively scheme, and those built-in stuff. I mean, he should be back to where he is. He's got an incredible supporting cast with the receivers, and then now you add Barkley, and their line is still really good. So he's got all the tools around him to succeed. It's just interesting how, a quarterback can vary. Like I look at Lawrence and dude, like what happened? You and I were texting about it and you go, you realize that Trevor Lawrence has the same stats as Gardner Minshew over the last 3 years. And I'm like, yeah, I can't understand it. And last year he took a major regression. Like what happened? Like, and he was a can't miss in my eyes.
Well, I mean, he had everything that you want. He had the size, he had the arm, he's got the athletic ability, he's got, he going back to Cartersville High School. I mean, all he did was win.
Yeah.
But I was there in Week 18 last year. If Jacksonville beats Tennessee in Nashville, they win that division. Houston doesn't even go to the playoffs. We don't even see C.J. Stroud carve up Cleveland. We'll see Jacksonville. So, and he made some major blunders in that game. I mean, he went kind of rogue and tried a quarterback sneak on 4th and 1. It wasn't the play that was called, and he got stuffed. And like literally, that play lost him the game. But there was other things that he left on the field that day against a Tennessee team that had nothing to play for. Vrabel's just had his guys out there playing hard. I mean, they should have gone in there and carved them up, and they didn't. And, Tennessee was a broken down defense. They weren't good. Jeff Simmons wasn't in there. They had injuries everywhere. Byard got traded. Like, their best players weren't on the field. And so he couldn't, you go, okay, couldn't finish the deal up 27-0 year before to the Chargers, couldn't finish the deal, last year in Week 18. Those are big moments, big games where your quarterback's got to come through. But overall, like I know Christian Kirk got hurt last year, and he leaned on Christian Kirk the year before heavily. But, I mean, it just wasn't enough.
No. And again, same thing, like doing mysterious things with the ball. And I don't know if that's a product of like pressing and, once you feel like you're swimming, but he felt like he was swimming last year. And Jalen at times during the slide, it's the same thing. When the quarterback has to be in control, right? And that's what's so you marvel at with Mahomes, Allen, who doesn't have a lot around them, right? Like those guys always felt like they were in control. Lamar last year.
The one thing I would say, just I'm not. I would say that if you look at Trevor and you look at Jalen last year, they have good fastballs, but they're fastball but they don't have a big repertoire of pitches. And so when they're like line drive, throw it, or Jalen just wants to put some air on it. Last year he wasn't as good with the deep ball. Too many ended up out of bounds. But you've got to be able to layer these passes, cuz I mean, like nobody wants to hear this, but Brock Purdy can layer a pass. Like like Garoppolo struggled with those throws in the middle of the field. San Francisco wants to carve you up in the middle of the field. They don't throw a lot of ball, like a lot of fade routes and, these they don't throw a lot of deep balls like that. They carve you up like the way, Kurt Warner did with the Rams. I mean, they're beating you on dig routes and things over the middle. And those are difficult throws with different, linebackers dropping, and you got to get it over.
Yeah, the depth of them. Yeah.
He has the ability to layer those throws. And that's what I don't see right now from Jalen at times and from Trevor at times. And I would say that's something they should work on.
Yeah, it's so funny you said that because I remember sitting there many times the last year, you and I, and we're watching Purdy, and we're seeing exactly what you said. Exactly what you said. And yet, like when we all come up with these, top, 10 lists and the quarterback stuff, Purdy's always admitted, right? Like you always go, Purdy, right? But meanwhile, you're right. Like we watched him make incredible throws, man. Like we watched him that way.
Well,
You know,
look, the big part, I don't care what offense you're in, a big part of any receiver success is the quarterback. So AJ puts up huge numbers on the road to the Super Bowl, and a lot of them are just these deep balls. Where, like you said, a lot of one-on-ones.
yeah,
Jalen put it out there, he went and got it. But if you look at Brandon Ayuk, who's looking for a contract, you look at his numbers before Brock Purdy and after Brock Purdy. I mean, he looks like a number one wide receiver. But everybody got fed. Kittle got his numbers. Debo got his. Christian McCaffrey obviously get hit. Like he's getting the ball to these guys continuously and with consistency. And so you just go back and you look at Brady, you look at Breeze, and you just like those guys are the benchmark accuracy. But look at the number of touchdown passes that guys caught in their careers. Guys that Lance Moore in New Orleans, Marcus Colston, Devery Henderson, like guys that went other places and never did anything. The quarterback is such a big part of the receiver's success. And I'm happy all these receivers are getting paid. But, Stephon Diggs is a really good player. But is he a really good player if Josh Allen isn't his quarterback? Now, maybe CJ will pick it up. But, like, these receivers are as good as their quarterbacks.
And you're speaking, and I'm just thinking about coaching, right? Because we go, look at Purdy, look what he's got, right, with Shanahan. And, look, as great as Mahomes is, look what he's got, right, with Andy. And you see Lawrence, and you go, I always loved Doug, and, he's got the great temperament. But as far as that offense should clearly be better. We talked about the coaching deficiencies last year with Hurts, right? And then, Wentz, go back to that piece of it. Like the coaching aspect almost trumps the quarterback because a great coach can win with a mediocre, talented quarterback, but yet a great quarterback feels like you can't win with a bad coach.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with a great deal. I think it's. I mean, we're all obviously got great respect for Jaworski, and Jaws used to say that all the time to us. When we were doing podcasts with them, like it's probably the worst coach position in all of sports is the quarterback. Like he kind of just he's got this talent, like let's roll him out there. But I mean, Mike Martz was a big part of Kurt Warner's success. And Mike Martz is a great coach. Now, Kurt did a lot on his own, went to Arizona, like he had a nice second act. But I would agree that the quarterback coach with the coordinator and the offense, and then everything around him, is as much as part of any quarterback success as any other part. And so, I mean, some guys are outliers. Brady, whether he had, Josh McDaniel or not, he's still the GOAT. But for the most part, like I remember watching Jameis Winston. I mean, number one pick, talented guy, good leader. Everybody likes Jameis. But like I remember watching the offense in Tampa, there was like no answer some days to where, and like now he's like, so what happens is like he leads the league in interceptions last year in Tampa. And you look at him and he'd get to that second read and he's got nothing. And now he's like flustered. And this is when guys get in trouble. This is what happened to Dak 2 years ago when he led the league in interceptions. Guys get to that spot where, okay, I got the ball in my hand. It's closing in on me. I got to make a decision. And not everybody can just extend plays like Mahomes. Very few can. And so now you're like late in the progression. The ball's coming out funny. Your mechanics are bad, and the ball gets picked. And so, like, I see that to Jameis, and I'm like, it's not all his fault. And I'm not here to defend Jameis. I mean, he's a backup quarterback at this point. But at some point, you just don't take that step. You just don't take that step. I mean, there's very few guys that can read a defense like Joe Burrow and have every mechanic necessary. Like he's on one leg last year, and he's still making these incredible throws.
Hey, and you're going to go, so I want to get you out of here because you're on your way to Baltimore, which I'm dying to hear about.
Yeah.
You were with the Giants. Give me a quick thumbnail about what you see from the Giants. Obviously, with the Eagles division, the whole thing. What are you seeing up there?
Well, they're trying to put this offensive line together, and we'll see. Carmen Priscillo, the new offensive line coach, is a pretty good guy. That's got to come together. I think Daniel Jones, everybody just wants nobody would have been successful, no quarterback behind the offense line he played behind or DeVito. But the one takeaway from yesterday is just Malik Neighbors. Like you just watch that kid move. Like you just always scouting is a study of movement, cuz you watch that kid move, change directions, and just his strength. I was talking to the Green Goblin, Jalen Mills, after practice. That he's LSU kid, so he's gotten to know him pretty good. He's so strong and catches everything with his hands. Like he could be the three receivers. If you look at Jalen Hyatt, Wyandotte Robinson, and Malik Neighbors, like I think Daniel Jones, if the offense line is decent to good, like he can have some success. And defensively, they got some youth in the back end, but the front seven should be pretty good.
Wow, that's interesting. Listen, get on the road. I can't wait to hear about King Henry and what your thoughts are on the Ravens, man. Always the best. Good. You're the greatest. Baldy.
Thank you, buddy. I'll talk to you soon, man.
There he is, Baldy. He's in Baltimore now. Where the Phillies will be.
We all silly like the mayor.